Hello and welcome to the Elsa B. Smith Show. Our topic for today is I am not a label, living a full life with autism. And my guest is Dan Jones. Dan is the author of the book Look Into My Eyes, about his experience as a person living with autism spectrum disorder. He has over 15 years experiences working with children, teens and families, and he's also a clinical hypnotherapist and a hypnotherapy instructor. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Dan, you were diagnosed with Aspergers as an adult. What is Aspergers and what is autism?
Well, technically Asperger's is high-functioning autism. So until a few years ago, it was diagnosed separately from autism. So it was, for quite a while, it's been felt that its part is linked with autism. And so what they've done from a diagnostic perspective is they've now put it all together. So you have the lower end, the lower functioning end, which is more sort of struggling with, say, learning difficulties and maybe being more likely to be mute and that kind of thing down at that end. And then at the other end, you may struggle a lot with social situations, with the social communication challenges, but the chances are you're generally going to come across appearing maybe like there's not a problem. So it's only when certain situations happen that it can become evident to people. So if they saw me, for example, standing in a room, they might think, well, there's nothing wrong with you, and told by a friend, oh, that guy over there, he's got autism, and people would look at me and think, oh, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with him. But whereas if I was sat in a corner, mute and maybe rocking and having a lot of other difficulties, then it's more pronounced. So, so it's just part of a spectrum, a social communication.
Dan is the author of the book Look Into My Eyes,
as well,
about his experience as a person living with autism spectrum disorder.
So that's what it is.
Okay, and you were diagnosed as an adult. You weren't diagnosed as a child, so you had to go through your school career not knowing what this condition is and how it applies to you. How did that impact on your early life?
For me, I didn't know any different. So I think from my parents' perspective, it probably impacted on them a bit more than me because they had feelings about things that I didn't care about.
Yeah.
So mum organising a birthday party and no one turning up had an emotional impact on her, but I couldn't care less. And it had such an impact on her that she said she's never arranging a birthday party again for me or once I had brothers or any of my brothers. So it had an impact on her because you put all that time and effort as a parent into arranging a party and then no one attends, and obviously I assume from a parent point of view that doesn't feel good. But from my point of view, I remember the day and remember just carrying on doing what I was doing beforehand. And even nowadays, if someone organises a birthday party for me, as does happen, I go off and do my own thing. And I have been accused of, this is your party, you should be engaging in it. But instead I'll be perhaps with my camera taking photos of insects and lizards and butterflies and whatever else is going on, other than being involved in the party. So the only area it really impacted on me as a child was my learning, that I didn't get extra support at all around my learning. And so I would always follow instructions I was given unless I couldn't see a logical reason to. So if a teacher said to me to do something and I thought, no, that sounds like you're saying do it like a punishment or something, that doesn't, like you're punishing all the class or something, then I wouldn't do it because I'd be thinking, well, there's no logical reason or benefit I can see for going out of my way to do that for you. And a lot of what I did in school, I always saw it as you're doing it for them. I never saw it as I'm doing it for me. I saw it as they want me to fill in this book. They want me to read that book. They want me to watch this program. I never really saw it as anything other than just complying and following instructions. So my perspective, I think, led to me not learning properly. I was very good at learning what I was interested in, but that was not what was taught in school.
Yeah.
So I was very good at science, but the type of things I was learning in science weren't taught in school while I was in school. I would answer questions like, what is gravity? I remember being asked that for my mock GCSE, and I'd put that it's the warping of space and time, and got my mock exam paper back, and it had a cross next to it to say that was wrong. And I said, that isn't wrong. That is 100% correct.
Yeah,
Gravity is the warping of space and time. And the teacher said, no, on the GCSE exam, it's the attraction of two bodies.
There's only one right answer.
But that was disproved. That was disproved by Einstein. It's the warping of space and time. And it's actually to do with acceleration and stuff like that. And I explained all this, and teachers said, no, that's not the kind of answer you give to the exam question until you do more advanced science. And I said, but the laws of physics don't change between exams.
Yeah.
And so for me, this was totally illogical. So it's that kind of, I was learning that because that's what I was learning privately, that I bought books and I was reading books about it. It's not what I was learning by being in school, having a teacher telling me, and I was actually being told that my learning was wrong for the level of learning I was supposed to be doing. And, so bits like that, that I think I struggled with. But I'd get so bogged down with detail that if someone gave me, say, a question that was really complicated, like a big paragraph, like in a maths question, and I had to try and read that maths question. I'm trying to follow all the detail from the top of the question to the bottom of the question. And it's that whole, if this train's approaching that train's at 40 miles an hour and this is at 60 miles an hour, and then they, where would they meet? And they do this whole complicated question. I've no idea what they're going on about. I'd rather have them say, this plus this, what does it equal? Or this minus this, what does it equal? Or this divided by this. Or, if I actually saw the event playing out. So I'm far more a visual person and spatially aware person. So the interesting thing with being on the autistic spectrum is that on the one hand, I'm spatially aware with my mind, and yet physically I bump into things and fall over and things like that really easily. So I've always found it really conflicting, because I can throw myself from one tree to another perfectly fine, but I can walk down a street and misjudge the width of a doorway and whack my arm on the door because I've misjudged how wide where I'm trying to squeeze through is. And my dad described it when I was like 3 years old or something, said, Daniel, I wouldn't call him clumsy, but there's something wrong with his ability to judge where he is. And I always say that I think it's actually a proprioception issue. So I struggle to know where my body is in space, rather than it being necessarily about clumsiness. But that spatial awareness thing of when I look at something, if someone just sent me the same maths question on a video and I watched two trains, I could judge what was going to happen and tell you what's going to happen in my language. So I've always had that kind of, that's how my brain works. And obviously a lot of education doesn't suit how individuals' brain works. You spend your education trying to fit how you really think to how the teachers tell you you've got to think about things, because that's what's going to pass the exam.
So from where I'm sitting, it sounds to me like a very much a black and white world, and you are in this world, but you're not necessarily part of this world. You're more like a spectator, and very unemotional about it. How did that impact on your career choice?
Well, initially I fell into my career. So I started life working in a holiday camp, serving customers, but I don't get on well with customers, because customers will come through the tills and they will say, oh, you just gave me back the wrong change. And my view is, well, no, I just counted the change, so I know exactly what change I've given you. It is correct. And they would say, no, you're wrong. And so I would say, right, fine, we're cashing up the till. And I would stop. So this is at Butlins. So there would be 1,500 people coming through in a 2-hour lunch period. And I would stop the till to get a manager to cash the till up, to prove whether either I'm right or they're right. And because I wouldn't take their word for it. So I was quickly moved away from customers, because apparently customers are always right, but they're not. They're wrong sometimes, and I'm not going to lie to them if they're wrong. And so I was put in the pot wash. which was ideal for me. And if someone would pay me enough money, that's the job I would do for the rest of my life, washing up.
Yeah.
But then Butlins was closing for a period of time to have a refit. I didn't like the change of routine and all these other bits and pieces. So I literally walked out that day. And in those days, this is the late 90s, the job centre had jobs up on the wall. And you could just look around the wall and you could think, oh, that says no skills required. I could do that. And so that's how I got into working in care. But what I found, so initially it was with mental health, what I found was actually by being detached, by predominantly being an observer rather than someone who likes to get involved in things, is really beneficial for the care sector and for dealing with people with problems and emotional conditions and things like that. That I've spent most of my care career, which has gone from the late 90s all the way through till today, with attending courses with other people where people are always saying you've got to have the empathy, you've got to care deeply about wanting to change people's lives, and you've got to care for this person and that person. And I've always thought, well, how on earth do you get your job done if you care? Because to me, caring would stop me from being able to make the correct, rational decisions about things. It would make me make emotional decisions instead of rational decisions. So I've always felt that actually, it's not that I'm an uncaring person. I want the best for everyone. But what it is that I don't specifically care for anyone. So all these people who I meet, whether it's families, whether it's individuals with depression, anxiety, or whatever, I don't actually care for them as an individual. I want them to have the best life exactly as I want every other human being, every animal, I want everything to have the best opportunities and the best lives. But I don't feel that connection with this one individual. So they can tell me the most horrific stories about their life. And I couldn't care less. It is what it is. It's happened. Obviously, I'd much prefer horrible things not to have happened to people. But I don't get emotional about that. I don't get attached to that. It's, they can tell me all the abusive stuff that's happened, and I just think, okay, so what do we need to work on? How can we move this forward? And so I'll just very pragmatically look at it, and in a very black and white way, and I am an observer. I will be detached and just looking at what's taking place, and I'll find a solution or help them to find a solution. I won't get drawn into the story and then so bogged down and lost in the story they're telling me, which I see I have obviously attended lots of group clinical supervisions. Most other people in the group clinical supervisions, they're all therapists, and they're all there trying to figure out how to detach from clients, to be able to go home and not take their work home with them and all these sort of things. I'm there trying to think, how can I learn to attach just a little bit more so that I don't come across as too cold. And generally in a therapy setting, clients have never had a problem with it. It's more if someone's like a friend or something, that if they then ask me advice, they find me really cold because they know me as a friend, and they don't normally ask me advice as a friend, and then when they do ask advice, they find it quite cold and blunt. Whereas in therapy settings, I've always found that actually, if someone comes in, for example, who's overweight, and they're quite down and depressed about this idea of being overweight, and they're talking, and I'm just talking very bluntly back with them about the fact that they're overweight, and having no problem referring to them as being overweight. I'm not kind of glossing over and lying to them. Whereas, and I've had many people at the end of therapy say they found that really helpful, to know that I'm as open and honest with them and treating them authentically as being that I'm not judging them for being overweight or anything, but I'm being open and honest with them about what they know themselves. They know they're overweight. They know they're there because they're overweight, and they want help with that. Me saying, oh, it's not that bad really, you're not that overweight, and me doing all that is lying to them, and they know I'm lying to them. So I'm doing it to make them feel better, but that doesn't make people feel better. My experience is it generally doesn't make people feel better because they know you're lying to them. And so there's always that falseness to it. Whereas me saying, and I use terms like fat because that's how my brain works. So other people water it down and may say terms like obese, which sounds softer. And but to me, it's okay. So you're fat. How much do you want to lose? What are we working on? It's all very blunt. It's very, I'm not judging.
Mm-hmm. You're just
You're in the
stating a
situation
fact.
you're in, and we want to help you move forward.
Yeah.
And it's just very direct, and because there's no malice behind it, I've so far always found that people have taken that quite well. That it may sound to someone who knows me as a friend like, oh, how could you just call me fat? But actually, to someone who only knows me as a therapist, that's all they know. It's like, oh, this is refreshing. He's not lying to me. He's not trying to fake making me feel better through lying. It is what it is.
And in a way, by being very direct and very black and white, you actually associate with their problem. And you don't try and scale it down. You literally put yourself into their shoes without the emotional baggage.
And it means I can also talk about things that people are uncomfortable to talk about.
Yeah.
In a way that's calm. So I had one parent who was saying that what helped her be able to say what she needed to say was the fact that I didn't, when she was getting all emotional, and she was really desperately trying to hold the emotion back so that she could say what she had to say.
Yeah.
And she said other people, when she's got like that, have said to her, oh, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay to cry. And then she's burst out into floods of tears and not got out what she actually wanted to try and say. Whereas to me, I just saw that she was struggling to hold in this emotion, but saw also that she was desperate to do that because she wanted to finish saying what she was trying to say. So to me, it was, I just continued very bluntly having the same conversation with her about the issues she was trying to talk about, and the emotion subsided while we were talking. The same when talking about grief and all these sort of things. That just being able to have that blunt conversation, two-way conversation, without it being an emotional conversation. I'm not focusing on the emotion. I'm just talking about the topic that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Let them continue talking about that topic rather than me getting it. And I think most people do this. They get into the emotion and they say, oh, it looks like it's quite upsetting for you. And as soon as you say that to someone who's on the verge of bursting into tears, they burst into tears.
Yeah.
And so it stops. That then means that they're there crying, but thinking, but I've got things I want to say, and now I'm crying and I'm struggling to hold this in so that I can say what I need to say so that I can get help.
Yeah.
And so people have commented on how they found that really helpful. Although therapists who've watched me work, so I've obviously had senior people watch me and things like that, and they've said, oh, no, you really should have just said, oh, I noticed this is really sad for you, and you should acknowledge that. And yet the clients have said it's really helpful that I didn't acknowledge it. So the therapy skills you get taught about, you notice it, so you bring it out there and you make them aware of it. Sometimes I feel actually you need to know when not to do that. Don't just do it. Yeah, if you're going to do it for a purpose. And I think that's the difference, that my communication, especially in therapy sessions, is done for a purpose. Yeah. So if I choose to focus on the emotion and talk about it, I'm doing that for a purpose. So if someone's crying, spontaneously crying, and obviously I do hypnosis, so sometimes people will go into hypnosis and then suddenly they'll start crying, and I have no idea why, because we had no reason to know, and it's just spontaneously happened at some point. And so I'll talk about, it's okay, this is a safe environment for you to allow that to happen. You've got the strength to get through that internally, and I'll say these sort of things to help them through it, given that I know no content about what has just triggered that. It's some association they've perhaps made. So then I'm using that in a very specific way. But if that doesn't happen, I don't bring it up. I don't see that something's upsetting and then think, oh, I better tell them, this is an upsetting thing for you. Because they know that already. They knew that it was upsetting. They don't need me to tell them and reinforce that. Yeah. And they don't need me to re-trigger it. So I always do everything I can not to re-trigger things. And obviously, the plan is always make people feel better by the end of a session than they were when they came in the door.
And with you not buying into their emotional baggage, because you can't. That's just not how you function. It allows them to also then take a step back and to go into your world where things are either black or white, and then they can actually look at their problem from a little bit of a detached point of view and find a way out of it. Okay, so you have basically built a career where you used what in social situations should be viewed as a disadvantage, you are using as a huge advantage in your career. What are you doing? Are you doing any work to help people cope with autism? For example, bullying. People with autism are different, and anybody who's different gets bullied. How do you help them cope with that?
Well, I generally don't work with. I work with parents more than I work with actual kids when it comes to things like that. But my advice to anyone who's being bullied, the best thing to do is to not react at all. So don't react with fear, but also don't react with anger. So obviously, if it comes down to self-defense and safety, do whatever you have to do to maintain your safety. But beyond that, I remember I've never properly been bullied. I've had people single me out and things like that because of being different, but never properly been bullied to the extent that I would say that's gone on for a period of time as bullying. The closest would be being in work and having managers do that. But in school, whenever anyone used to push me over or start bullying me, so I remember one bully who was sort of the biggest bully in the school at the time, and he decided to pick on me. He pushed me over, I stood up and carried on walking. He pushed me over again, I stood up and carried on walking. He pushed me over again, I stood up and carried on walking. And in my head, I was thinking, I really don't understand what the purpose of pushing me over is supposed to achieve.
Yeah.
So I didn't even make the connection that I'm supposed to be scared, or that this is supposed to irritate me and that I'm supposed to get angry. I just made no connection. I just, in my mind, was confused, thinking, I don't really grasp what you're sort of trying to get at.
Yeah.
And so after standing up a couple of times and carrying on walking, he stopped picking on me because there was no reaction one way or the other. And in work, when I worked in children's homes, it was the same. That I remember one kid who was in the home, he was 16. He was there because his care plan said, if you say no to him, he will try to kill you. There won't be any leeway to that. He will get a knife, he will try to slit your throat or stab you or do anything to kill you. And he was there because he was up for possible manslaughter where he came from in the country. And he said one day, you make me really, really annoyed because I can't get angry with you. He said, I've got a certain amount of anger within me when I start getting angry with people, but the only way to tip that to proper anger where I can do horrible things, rather than it just being anger where you're still kind of, like all of us have in us, that there's a certain level of, you can get angry with people, but you wouldn't kill them.
Yeah.
And yet there's a certain point where you would get so angry, you see red, you don't, never mind how rational and sane you normally are, you know, like someone trying to kill your family or something, you would kill them rather than have your own family killed. And almost any sane person, never mind how rational and calm you normally are, would have that point they can go to under certain circumstances. And for him, that point was much earlier than seeing your family attacked. It just needed someone to bounce the anger off of to the point where he could keep rising his anger. And he said, I can't do that with you. You know, I get angry with you and you just are like a plank of wood.
Yeah.
You don't react, you don't appear scared, and so I can't get that boost of energy of feeling superior and feeling empowered and feeling like I'm in control. But you're not getting angry with me, so I don't get that I have to fight you now to overpower you.
Yeah.
He said, you're not getting angry or scared, and so I run out of steam, is what he said. He just couldn't keep going and couldn't get that anger to take it to the next level. Whereas with other staff, he had very seriously physically assaulted them because they would react to it. They would either show fear because they know what he's like, or they would get angry with him because he's really angry with them, and they would end up trying to shout him down, and they would scream at him. And in 5 years of working in children's homes, I shouted once, and all that was to shout the word stop, because no one ever heard me shout. So to end an incident, I shouted the word stop really, really loudly, and that made everyone stop what they were doing to think, what's Dan saying? And then I spoke calmly instead. So it's that's my biggest tip for bullying is don't get angry or anxious, just remain calm and neutral. Doing that, obviously, for me, that was easy. For others, it may not be so easy, so it's learning how to do that. And obviously, I've worked with parents for them to help their kids to be able to do that. And obviously from a parenting point of view, kids fall out with each other and make up again dozens of times a day, and parents have a tendency to overreact. So, a child will get bullied, and they'll tell their parent, and the parent, right, I'm going down the school, I'm going to have a word with the school, I'm going to talk to the parent of the other child, and I'm going to... But by the next day, the kids are getting on fine. So the parent has blown it out, whereas the proper reaction a parent should give is, that sounds like it's really difficult, is there anything you'd like me to do to help? And put the ball in the child's court. Don't take everything away from the child and instantly take control and instantly dive down and try and deal with the school and deal with the other parents and, get them to deal with the child. Just ask the child. Sounds like it was difficult because they've come to you to tell you this. Sounds like it was difficult. Is there anything you'd like me to do? And it usually turns out all the child wanted was to offload. And that was it. They don't want the parent to go and dive in there and make it worse by dragging everyone into an office together or something.
Just give them the space. So, having been an employee and having worked with so many, so what would be the two biggest pieces of advice you would give to anybody who needs to deal with somebody with autism or Asperger's?
The biggest thing is treat them as an individual and don't judge them for being the individual that they are. And that includes not putting your own sort of reality upon them. So, for example, when my first marriage ended, I accepted it and moved on pretty much straight away. And yet people around me were saying, oh, you're supposed to go out and sleep around, and you're supposed to be really angry, and you're supposed to want to have a go at her and get back at her, and you're supposed to want to do this and want to do that. And to me, it was like, well, that's totally illogical. And so then they were saying, well, but if you don't do those things, it means you're repressing it and it's going to come out later. And that's complete rubbish.
Not in your world.
How I cope with things. So it was really, this is friends. And it was, in my opinion, dismissing my right to have my own way of handling things. And to me being me, it was saying, no, you're wrong in how you handle things. Rather than accepting, rather than hearing that from me and then thinking, oh, that's what Dan's saying, let's accept it. Because that's what he's saying. If he needs help, he'll come to us.
Absolutely.
And so that bit, if you're a parent, your kids will have that. They'll have breakups. They'll look at reality differently. So you get parents who try to get their child out of their bedroom and see it as a huge issue. Their child wants to spend all their time in their bedroom. And it could be. But likewise, it could not be an issue. And I spent a lot of time either in my bedroom or out in the woods. I didn't spend much time in the living room with the family or anything. And so for me, I didn't see it as an issue. But it could be that they're depressed or anything else. So what you do is a bit like the bullying thing. You knock on the door, ask, are you okay? Yes, I am. I'm okay, F off. Whatever they might end up saying, depending on who the child is and how they respond. Whatever they say, don't take it personally. So if they tell you to F off, don't take that personally. Just say, okay, if you do need to talk, I'm just downstairs. Or, in the kitchen or wherever. You open up an opportunity so that if there's something to them being in their room that means they need help, you've given them a way of getting that help. The important thing is you then do it. So that you don't have them come to you in the kitchen and you're in the middle of cooking and you've just told them, come to me if you need help. You go down, they come down to talk to you and you say, can you give me 10 minutes? No, you have to give them the time right now. That's what you've said to them. Now they've chosen to come and talk to you. And so even if you have to carry on working and you're feeling really inconvenient that they're making you talk to them while you're busy doing 1,000,001 other parent jobs, the reality is if that's where they want to talk to you, let them do it. So you give them a lifeline, you give them a way of communicating with you if they need to, but you put the ball in their court. You just make sure they're aware, because they could be like me, someone who, 99% of my time I'd rather spend it on my own in my bedroom. Yes, you want to socialise and you believe everyone should socialise, but I don't want to socialise and I am happy 99% of the time not to. When I do want to, I will. But
and
when I don't
okay.
want to, let me not. So it's having that. So that'd be my biggest tip, is just accept people's world view as what it is, rather than judging it against your own world view. and thinking everyone must hold my worldview. And that goes for everyone, not just obviously people on the spectrum. It goes for everyone. That the way to handle people is to accept that everyone has their own unique worldview, and as long as it's not causing harm to anyone else, or not likely to cause harm to anyone else, you should accept their worldview, even if it's totally polar opposite to your own. So if you're an extrovert who loves socializing, don't try and drag an introvert who's happy to sit reading books out to parties all the time when they're openly saying, I don't want to do these things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be a very close listener and observer. So that'd be my next kind of big thing, is you need to be able to listen and observe so that you can pick up if there's something going wrong. So pick up, does their non-verbal behaviour match their verbal behaviour? If they say, I'm having a problem with this, or no, everything's okay, but their face looks like they're not, then just offer them that lifeline, be supportive of them. So it's making sure that you're not, obviously, you're open to ideas, you're open to what they give off to you. And what, it could be that someone doesn't go to parties because they're scared. In which case you do need to test the boundaries, and they do need to learn to go beyond that. They do need to learn. If they're a child, they need to learn that as an adult you're going to have to mix with other people in work and things like that. So, but you do it safely. You don't drag them out. You say, look, this is something that as a skill you've got to learn. Do you think you're okay with it? So, for example, I am not shy, so I was generally okay. I would do everything I could to avoid having to go and socialise, but in a situation where I've got to do it, like going for a job interview or something, I would do it. Even if I didn't really want to do it. So there's a difference between that and it being a problem where you think, I don't want to do it, and it scares me to do it. And if it's that kind of thing, then a parent's job is to assist them in learning how to do that, learning to have those skills, but on their terms. Not on the parents' terms, not like just grab them by the ear and drag them out somewhere. So it's getting the balance right.
Dan, you've been talking about a very black and white world with no emotion, or not even emotional detachment, just no emotion. And what I get from that is such a warm heart, such a huge amount of empathy with humanity, with people. And I think many people can learn that from you. Don't get involved in the emotional drama, even if you are an emotional person. Just detach, calm down, and deal with the issues. It's really been very, very interesting listening to you. Now, if people want to get hold of you and get your advice or connect with you and get your book, this book, Look Into My Eyes, that you wrote, they can get that on your website, which is alt-solutions.org or danjoneshypnosis.com. And they can also contact you on Facebook on the page called Dan Jones Hypnosis.
Yeah.
That's been really interesting, Dan. I've just learned so much from a different world that, you do tend to accept that everybody is the same, when in fact we are about 3 billion facets of the same diamond. We are not the same. So,
I always say that the one similarity all human beings have is that we're all different.
Indeed.
Indeed. Every single person is different. And I always find, my one big conflict is marrying up the fact that on the one hand, I don't care about people as individuals, and I'm not generally an emotional person, although, some things do hit me emotionally and then I get overwhelmed. So it's either it's black and white. I either have no emotion or I'm totally overwhelmed with emotion. But then on the other hand, I want the best for every human being, every animal, the planet, everything. I just think that there's a way that, but I think it comes from a sort of moral, ethical kind of place. So rather than it coming from an emotional place, my kind of empathy or whatever someone might call it, it comes from my sort of worldview of how I would like the world to be, how I believe that everything should run. And it's from that kind of, I don't know, a sort of ethical, this is my worldview place. And then trying to fit everything to that worldview rather than it being about any one individual and their personal needs or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, that's been really interesting. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate you spending the time to talk to us about this. And I'll be back next Sunday at 4 o'clock, same time, same place, with another fascinating topic. Thank you and goodbye.